A very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you, depending on where you're joining from. Welcome to L&D Insights, a live Q&A series with the who's who of learning and development. In today's episode 2 of L&D Insights, we have with us Matt Adlai-Gail, Director of Education Services at Model N, where he heads the product education for the computer software company's customer and partner community. Welcome to the show, Matt. I know that the brief introduction that I had for you did little justice to the kind of achievements and accomplishments that you've had over time. So why don't you fill in the gaps for us, and then we can get started with the show.
Great. Thanks so much, Pranjali. I've been at Model N for a little over 3 years now as Director of Customer Education Services. But I've been involved in customer education from the very beginning. I had a master's in teaching, developed custom training for large telcos, financial services, moved into SaaS-based training and product management, and that's really guided my whole career. I've just loved the whole concept of how people learn, and these days it's not just sort of learning from books, but it's learning learning about technology and learning using technology, and just that human technology interaction I find just really fascinating. And I think there's a lot of room for individuals and organizations to do it better. And I always am striving to find new ways and try to bring innovation to the space, and ultimately help our customers be more successful. That's really what it's all about. And I love working at Model N because I've had the space to do that. And as we'll talk about later, there's a lot of great challenges and opportunities there.
That's awesome, Matt, and I'm so looking forward to the conversation. You spoke about different ways of learning and how learning itself has evolved over time. But today, what we'll be talking about is training the new normal customer. And in case you're wondering what or who this new normal customer is, I urge you to hold a mirror to yourself. So if you're like me or most of us out there, over the last 1 year alone, I'm sure you have undergone digital transformation, both at scale and across all different areas of your life. So how you work, how you collaborate, communicate, and even how you learn has literally dramatically changed over time. And add to this equation a company that deals in computer software, maybe a tech solution or a service that is integral to the success of their customers. And what this then calls for is a good amount of customer handholding, training, and education, or may I really say, training the new normal customer. So let's start this conversation by uncovering the very core of what customer training is. How do you think, Matt, the customer expectations have changed, maybe past after the pandemic or overall in the past decade or so, and their impact on customer training?
Well, because Model N, our software is so mission critical for customers, customer education has always been a priority. But since the pandemic, it's become an even greater priority. So the backdrop of demand has been growing, but with the pandemic, it's been growing a lot more. It's unprecedented demand from what I see. And I think some of it's driven from the fact that there used to be a lot more sort of informal learning going on inside of offices, with people working side by side and customers teaching each other, super users and mentors and things like that. A lot of that stuff that would have happened in person is just not happening as much. I think people are a little bit more on their own, and they have resources, but being really well trained and knowing what they need to do, I think has just become a really an even bigger deal than it already is. When you're working from home and don't have the normal support systems. When it comes to the new normal and what customer expectations are, I think customers are expecting that the training during the pandemic is going to be the same as training live. You book it in full days, and it's very intensive. and you get a lot accomplished, and then you carry that out through the rest of the project. But in reality, it's not. and when you try to do full day remote sessions, I mean, clearly it's not going to work. So we've always wanted to break training into smaller pieces and spread it out over longer periods of time. But if you're flying an instructor out, there's expenses and things like that, and the goal is to get as much done in as little time as possible. So this is the complete opposite, where we want to be able to spread it out over time. So for us, the new normal is basically learning in 2-hour live sessions. There's Zoom burnout. People don't want to be sitting doing the same thing for more than a couple of hours at a time. And even within that 2 hours, if it's just 2 hours of listening, even that's not going to work. So I mean, it works, but it's not optimal. So what we have found to be the optimal mix is that breaking up a day's worth of training into 3 2-hour sessions that go over multiple days. Sometimes we have customers, who have a morning session and an afternoon session if there's a lot of training, and that works too. But even that is tougher than just the 2 hours, a 2-hour live session. And the way we break that down is about half of it is lecture and discussion, and half of it is hands-on activities, actually actively doing things. And it could be active discussions, it could be active exercises of performing tasks like the tasks you'll do on your job, but in a training environment. And having those, we call those virtual labs, having those is really a key part of that success. So we've ramped that up quite a bit, and we want to make sure that there's always as much hands-on as possible, and to balance that out with a lecture and discussion that's there.
There's so much to unpack in there, Matt. What you said, is there something you want to add to this? Sure, go on.
Well, I mean, if you want to get into more about, how we keep customers engaged during remote training, because, it's just really difficult to stay focused, on the task at hand for so long. So, my team, our instructors have been absolutely fantastic in figuring out ways to keep our learners engaged. And so, our instructors might, if they're doing an activity, they might say, "Oh, Pranjali, please share your screen that you can show us." Or if you say, "Hey, you ask for volunteers of who's going to project their screen," and you move around, you kind of keep everybody on their toes a little bit. I think that approach, it sounds a little corny, but it actually works really well. And with Zoom, you can, it's easy to say, "Hey, just click share. Please share your screen and let's discuss this thing." And that's really great because it definitely, as well as keeping people on their toes, it keeps them engaged, and it becomes just a lot more dynamic of a session. Another thing that we've been doing a lot of is breakout rooms, just using Zoom, where you might break people into groups, and within that group there might be one person sharing their screen, another person reading out instructions, and another person adding some kind of commentary or something like that. And then the instructor can move from group to group, a lot like you would in a live setting. But that's actually worked really well too, because we want to get our customer users talking to each other. I think that's a really important thing, and that's usually a typical thing that happens during a live classroom session, where as customers are understanding the new what's changed about their software or this new module that they need to implement, that they start asking questions of each other about, hey, how are they're starting to visualize how to use the system, using the system, and then asking questions. Well, what about this contract type? How would that work? And so they start discussing with each other, and then that intra-customer collaboration is fantastic, because they will end up learning more from each other than they will, when they're just talking to an instructor. And that's the natural progression of change management and learning. It goes from just learning the facts to understanding how the facts apply to their particular situation. So So that's really we're really excited to be able, even when as things eventually start opening up again, these techniques and things are going to stay with us and really enhance the learning experience and basically try to accelerate the learning that our customers need.
That was a very elaborate description of how everything is changed. And I'll try to summarize that very succinctly. And please correct me if I'm wrong. So, one is definitely because of the push that happened because of COVID-19. We were compelled to pivot to digital. So, for most companies that were already doing digital, it really meant trying out new things, innovative things. And you mentioned a few of them. So, one was the pivot to digital that happened. But along with that, I think as consumers or customers, we also had the power back in our hands. And what I mean by this is because we were kind of pushed to do things by ourselves at our own pace. We got used to training at our pace too. So a lot of self-learning, self-paced learning came in action. But at its core, even with all of these changes, what did not change and what will not change, and that is something that you also mentioned, is our need to collaborate, our need to have a two-way exchange of dialogue. So everything you mentioned about a breakout room or how you encourage learners to actually share or project their screen as they learn is a great way to show that learning happens when it is exchanged and not really within a siloed way of a monologue or just one way of giving information in a unidirectional way. Right? And let's take a step back, Matt. And my question now is, how do you think customer training is important for an organization? And in short, what are the different benefits, advantages that a company like Model N, maybe that's a good use case to speak about, but even beyond that, how can people actually benefit from this?
Again, another great question, Pranjali. So, when I think about customer education and what's really driving it, I think you want to look at a few different factors, and one is just the overall complexity of the software or whatever it is you're learning. The more complexity, the more education you're going to need, and then also how important it is for the success of the company. So Model N software, is like an ERP system. The stakes are very high. It's managing, billions of dollars, flowing through the whole, life sciences and semiconductor ecosystems. And the need to get it right is extremely important. And the the risk that's involved with not with making errors and things like that is really pretty high. So I think that the customer education plays a critical role, and I think our customers understand that, and that's why my team is so busy. Another really important thing is the dynamics of the marketplace where our customers are in. In like a typical ERP system, there's very defined rules. Once you learn the rules and learn how to do things, it pretty much stays the same over time. But the extra challenge, especially in this day and age, and specifically for customers like Model N's customers, is that the market is changing. Market conditions are changing. What customers are doing needs to pivot really quickly. So, for example, most of our customers are in life sciences, and several of them had to pivot to put more resources towards vaccines. And we were running customer education for vaccine teams that were just about to help with the rollout of a COVID vaccine. So those kinds of things are really exciting, and it just plays the importance of like sort of knowledge is power, and how our customers rely on us to help them be successful. So I think that's really important. But you mentioned one thing about self-paced training and things like that. That's really important too. I talked about all that live collaboration, but none of that would happen unless there was a lot of use of the learning management system. It used to be that LMSs were there. You need them for compliance training, et cetera. But now learning management systems, they hold all that great self-paced content that you need. And if someone comes to me and says, Matt, I absolutely need an instructor next week for this 2 days of training, I can say, hey, you know what? Well, in fact, about there's a lot of stuff that you can learn on your own. And I'm going to push that content to you in your portal, and you'll have a week to go through it. And then because of that, you may only need a day of live training. So that's great for us because we don't, we're not taking up our valuable instructor time on stuff that people could learn on their own. And it keeps the customer more engaged, spreads out the learning more over time, and just has people more responsible for their own learning and staying active in the process, and that overall leads to better outcomes.
Absolutely. I think learners in the driver's seat is more than just a buzzword, and for good reasons. But what I want to do next is really hone into this one thing you said, which is learning management systems, right? Because LMS by itself is this huge, wide web. And without really getting too caught up into what it is, let's just speak about the one thing which kind of relates and resonates best with what we're talking about with regards to customer training, which is extended enterprise training. So Matt, my next question is, if at all you have to go for customer training, or it could be partner training or dealer training really, what do you think are the key features in an LMS that people should look for? Maybe the must-haves to start off with.
You bet. One of the must-haves, at least for us, is to be able to mix out-of-the-box content with customer-specific content. So UpsideLMS, which is our LMS that we use for customer education, enables us to set up a portal for each customer. We push out all the training that's relevant to that particular customer, which will be different from customer to customer. And then once it's there, then any materials that we build custom for them, or any live training that we run, is recorded and curated and put into their particular portal. And so it basically, so it needs to be secure. So if all the customers were on the same portal, then there'd be a risk of them seeing each other's stuff or whatever. For security reasons, all this content needs to stay totally secure. So by giving each customer their own portal and giving them the ability to take out of the box content and then add their own content to it, including things like work instructions and things, they can create their own onboarding programs that brings in the best of all the pieces that they have, and they can do that in their, we call it learning library, but it's their LMS that's specifically in place for Model N software. So I think the customer specific content is really, really, really huge there. That's a must-have. In terms of other factors, I think ease of use is incredibly important. There's a lot of LMSs out there that are just, you log in and you're like, what is it? What's a transcript? What's this? And it's hard to just know what to do, how to find content and things like that. And it can be very frustrating. And the last thing, it's hard enough to get people to complete training, but if the whole onboarding to their learning management system is difficult, then it makes it all that much harder, and you want to reduce the barriers. So ease of use for end users, and also ease of use for administrators. I mean, one of the things we love about UpsideLMS is that I can train an administrator. Well, they can take self-paced training for it, or if I can have 30 minutes with a particular person, I can explain everything they need to know as a learning library, as an LMS administrator for Upside. Being able to add content, manage users, make assignments, all that stuff can be covered. It's just really intuitive. There's not a lot of extra stuff that distracts you. So it's really so well built for just being able to have particular customers administer it for their own users. So that ease of use you can't understate it. If it needs to be scalable for us, and if every customer said, "Oh, Matt, can you please add this user?" and I get that call 50 times a day, it's just not scalable. So because the ease of use is there, it enables us to have our customers be a lot more self-sufficient with their learning and so forth. Another piece there is that Upside has a lot of sort of time-saving sort of scalability techniques, like the ability to clone a portal, the ability to clone a curriculum, the ability to do bulk changes and bulk adds and things like that. And I have to say, my favorite new feature in Upside is the ability to do scheduled reports. Because every time we set up like a blended learning where there's a self-paced piece and then there's a live piece, the manager of the group who's doing the self-paced piece wants to know, how are my learners doing with getting the pre-work done? And it's really important. It's key to their success to be able to do that. And so I can really quickly, or they can, set up a little schedule report that says, here's the learners, here's what they need to learn. And every day I'm going to get a spreadsheet sent to me that's going to tell me what % done each person is. And that kind of visibility to help with compliance. But again, it's simple and easy to set up. Customers really like that, and it saves my time, it saves their time, and it makes that LMS really work for them. So those are the key things, Pranjali, I see, and I'm so grateful that we chose Upside for our LMS, because I don't know how we would have done it if we had chosen some other solutions. So.
What a great summarization. And I'm glad you spoke about, when you spoke of ease of use, you kind of catered to both. It's not just the learner, because of course there is learner adoption, and we definitely need to get learners to use the system and to get engaged with it. But I think also on the admin front, sometimes we just overlook that and focus so much on just the UI and the UX of the learner side, that we kind of are blindsided to what's happening on the admin. But it's very important to ensure that you have that kind of automation, you have all of those reports or anything that you really want to do with the system at the hands of the admins too. For all of our audience today who are listening to us, if you're looking to take your L&D from good to great, stop by at UpsideLMS.com for a chat with our learning solution experts. Our AI-powered LMS and curated library of off-the-shelf e-learning content will wow you. That's a promise we make. So Matt, thank you so much for your insights. But before I let you go, I definitely have one question to ask you, which is, what insight did you wish you had, maybe when you joined Model N, or maybe even before, about customer training in general, that you wish you had back then and you have it now? So, the things like we kind of develop over time in a very retrospective fashion. Is there something that comes to your mind?
I would love to say no, but of course there are many things that are like that. I think one of the biggest things is being able, before you start any training, is to have a really good discussion with the customer stakeholder to really understand what they're trying to accomplish. And it's not always the same, and you don't want to make assumptions about, oh, they're going to get this standard training and it's going to be this agenda. But you make the whole agenda discussion an interactive thing, and they say, well, you know what, this piece we don't use, so we don't really want to spend time on this, but this other thing is really important, we want to spend extra time on that. So without having to customize training, what we've learned to do, I mean, it was certainly a learning for me, was to tailor the learning experience to the specific needs of the customer and get them engaged early on in the process, so you really understand, what does success look like? And by having those discussions up front, you're way more likely to be able to achieve that success. That's probably one of the biggest ones for me.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Matt. That was a wealth of information you shared on extended enterprise training, customer training in general. Thank you so much for everything. And to our amazing audience, thank you for being with us today. We will be back on 10th June with a different guest. Until then, stay safe and be good. Bye-bye.